אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומריך, הנה לא ינום ולא יישן שומר ישראל. אשא עיניי אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי. I lift my voice when all is dark to God's hands. I place my heart beyond of Kidruchi. I'm not afraid, Adonai. I lift my eyes when all is night, when I need help. I seek God's light. Adonai Rohi, I'm not afraid, Adonai. I'm not afraid, Adonai.
Good evening. I will invite you to turn off your cell phones, please, at this time. I am Rabbi Julia Weiss, and together with Cantor Doug Kotler, we thank you all for being here today. Those of you that are guests to this place, and those of you who are part of the Orami family. You've made the choice to be here now for the Kipnes November family, and your presence is deeply meaningful. We come together as one community to support Paul and Michelle, Rachel, Daniel, and Noah as they continue to process the loss of their father, their papa, Ken. While we can't lessen the grief of losing Kenneth, we can show our love and care for the family as they process the early stages of their grief. Over the coming months and years, the first birthdays, anniversaries, Jewish and secular holidays, without Kenny, we will walk with them and hold them up as they move forward. You have started that process by being here tonight, and so on behalf of the family, I thank you again, not only for being here now, but for the countless times you will be there for them in the months ahead. Yesh kochavim she'omra magia artsa rak ka'asher hem atzmam avdu vinam. There are stars whose light reaches the earth only after they themselves have disintegrated and are no more. And there are people whose scintillating memory lights the world after they have passed from it. These lights, which shine in the darkest night, are those which illumine for us the path. Ken is now such a light. He will continue to illuminate the world through our memories of him and guide our paths as we navigate a world in which his physical presence is no longer here. We join together on your prayer sheets. Number 3, we read 23rd Psalm. A Psalm of David. Adonai is my shepherd, I am complete. In lush meadows you let me lie down. Alongside tranquil waters you lead me. You restore my life. You guide me in paths of righteousness for the sake of your name. Even when I walk through the valley of deep darkness, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they reassure me. You set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. Wine brims over my cup. Indeed, goodness and steadfast love shall pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai as long as I live.
If you're lost, you feel afraid, and you don't know what to say, then listen to our God. Is there a question on your mind? Is the answer hard to find? Then listen to our God. Listen with all your heart and soul, and with all your might. Write them and learn them and teach them well, every morning and night. Close your eyes. Quiet yourself, there's nothing to say. Stop all the chatter, it gets in the way. To our God. When the wind and the thunder finally disappear, there's still a voice that you will hear if you listen. highest hill, from the valley below. It can come from the edge of the universe. It can come from within your soul. Close your eyes. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kivod, Shem Kivod, Alechuto Leolam Vaed. Listen, listen to our God. Listen, listen to our God.
It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch, a fearful thing to love, hope, dream, to be and to lose. A thing for fools this, and a holy thing to live. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing, to love what death has touched. I now invite up Kenny's son, Paul, and daughter-in-law, Michelle, to share words with us about the life of Ken that lived in them.
I know it's different today because I'm sitting down there, and I think I haven't really done that since my kids were Rabbi Julia's kids' age, and I used to go off the bima all the time when the cantor was singing, and sit with them when I wasn't needed up on the bima. And I know it's different because I don't have my cell phone with me. I actually left it in the office, and I don't think I've done that ever. And I know it's different because I have this ribbon and it's torn. And I know it's different because I can't take care of you. Last week when we did the funeral for my dad, we were beginning the book of Devarim, of Deuteronomy, the last book of the Torah. Moses at the end of his life, and he's recounting the stories of the collective life of the Israelite people. And by recounting memories, Moses illuminates the cherished values and embeds them for the next generation. On that day, I said, as we gathered to remember Ken, Papa, my dad, we too were recounting memories and thereby embedding them for all of us here and for subsequent generations. My most abiding Jewish memory, my most abiding early Jewish memory, is with Papa and Lalam and with my mom. It involves building a sukkah at Congregation Shalom in Chelmsford, Massachusetts. My mom and dad I think my siblings and other families gathered, and we measured and sawed, we hammered and nailed. It took us all day in that parking lot, and everyone had fun building a sukkah. Years later, when Michelle and I had our family, we continued this tradition, building the sukkah, and we brought out 3 generations, my parents and my in-laws, Murray and Terry, who passed away earlier this year. But especially for me, it was with Papa, as we joined together and with the kids in the background. Except for Papa, none of us were really handy with tools. Yet we got the job done, creating and adorning a temporary dwelling. Year after year, we would dig into a boxed collection of Sukkot decorations and hang fall-colored fabric leaves, faux fruit, and dried flowers. In that rickety temporary dwelling, we were reliving the ancient biblical wandering, and we were creating memories together. My second most powerful memory is really 2. It's Papa's phone calling ritual, which Michelle will tell about. It started when I was a kid, when he had us call my grandparents every Sunday. But she'll tell you more. So the other part of that is the trips we would take, that he would take us, he and Mom, to Abaco and to Mexico and to Florida, Disney World. The best part for the grandkids was that Papa would fill the bottom drawer in the bureau in his room with candy. I mean to the brim, filled with chocolate. Apparently one time all the grandkids locked themselves in there until they finished it. That only happened once. He figured it out. But he was really smart, because to get to the drawer of the candy, you had to walk into the room. And to walk into the room, you had to give him a hug. And then you could feast for your heart's desire. My dad would do almost anything to bond family and kids together, embedding the Dor Vador into our family routine. My third most powerful memory of Papa is how he and Mom opened our house to each year to about 20 teenagers for nifty home hospitality conclavettes, or retreats. My colleague, educator Leslie Lippman, who was then a regional director of youth, said, "Your dad and your family were such important parts of the Reformed Jewish community in the wonderful heyday of nifty youth movements and congregational engagement in the Northeast. Ken had an outsized impact in our world. A light has been extinguished for sure, and his legacy will continue through you and your magnificent family." My dad taught me that if you prioritize the youth, make them feel like they belong, connect them into the temple, you create a generation committed to a powerfully inspiring future. My fourth set of memories revolve around Dad's Rahmanis, his compassion. Papa had a heart of gold and a deep desire to help others. Toward his family, that compassion was unending. It was Papa who brought Bobby, his grandmother, to live with them years earlier, instead of placing her in the nursing home as the rest of the family had decided. My mother will tell you that it was Papa who insisted that when they built their new home now their old home in Marston's Mills on the Cape, that they build an apartment above the garage so that my Uncle Elliot, an erstwhile hippie from those days, had a place to live. It was he who fought endlessly to make sure my brother Jeffrey got the disability help because of his Asperger's, and my sister got the support she needed through her divorce. It was Papa who would give away his money to anyone in need. Over his lifetime, he collected people to help. A Russian Jewish immigrant family that he employed in the optical shop of their state opticians in Worcester, Mass., all the way up to a disabled guy named Bob from the Cape who was in need, and so Dad helped. Dad went above and beyond. He was a caregiver and caretaker and a giver, and it was almost definitional to who he was. I realized since he died that from my dad I gained an appreciation for Judaism, and of course, for Israel, a devotion to family, a prioritizing of our youth, an overarching need to care for others, and most importantly, a love of chocolate. I learned to fundraise from him, to work tirelessly, to try not to do things in a half way of doing it. I don't mind being. From my dad, I learned the values that animate my life. From my mom, I learned the skills on how to effectuate it and make it all happen, and how to write. Those memories warm me as I contemplate the challenges in his life. He had a mantra, my dad. He said, "We'll take it as it comes," which you would think would give him the strength to overcome all obstacles, but which really meant, we'll take this one thing as it comes and push everything else aside until this thing is over. Sadly, his innate unwillingness to multitask challenges, even on the simplest things, combined with his decreased memory and his increasing depression, impeded his ability to move forward with ease in his later years. When we discover ECT, a 7-second electroshock therapy that they use to combat, to heal depression, it was a godsend, giving our dad some relief from the gnawing depression that he fought every day. Dad and I talked numerous times about all he lost over the years, the things he used to control. His work, his driving, his schedule, helping his kids and grandkids, caring for others. I'm not sure he fully grasped how well he set his children up to walk in his footsteps, to take over when he couldn't. We told him all the time, but I'm not sure he really grasped it. Still, alongside my siblings, I felt sad for him, watching a gregarious, powerful man shrink and disappear. My challenge will be to forget that and remember the before, or let go of that. Over lunch of kosher dogs recently at the stand, last time he was in, I caught a glimpse of my new dad, slower, kinder, more relaxed, who was trying to learn to take joy from his grandchildren, now 10 of them. His hyperbolic phrases still make me chuckle. "I'm gonna murder you" was his way of articulating how mad he was with us. "This is torture" was his way of saying something was emotionally upsetting to him. It was a generation. He also, whenever we got hurt, he'd say, "Don't worry, I'll go to Marshall's and buy you a new one," no matter what happened. But he also said, when something was one of a kind, he would say, "There's no facsimile." Regarding Papa, there's no facsimile. Dad and my mom, Linda, Lala, Mom, celebrated 60 years of marriage last June. From their beginnings at UMass Amherst, where he insists he was a BMOC, a big man on campus, they shared a love of family, the beach, and even beach vacations. As they aged, they enjoyed a 5 o'clock drink, a 9 o'clock scoop of ice cream, and a plethora of Lifetime and Hallmark movies. In fact, when I saw Matt Gross's mom, who probably produced 75% of those movies, I thanked her profusely for giving them comfort in their age. Nearing his end, Dad worried about Mom and only wanted to see Mom and give her his trademarked 3 kisses, one on a cheek, and one in the middle. Mom, had a stroke last September, and then another one in March when I was there, this couple of hours after Michelle's mom, Terry, died. She is in rehab, healing, 95% working her mind, and it's a long road. Sometimes I think my dad's quick exit, this man who never once had heart issues, dying quickly from a massive heart attack, was because he only wanted to relieve the stress on my mom and the family, so that she had the best chance of fighting back from her stroke. There's so many memories that keep popping up from another time. I'll share those with you. I'll miss him. The biggest emptiness, I suppose, will occur each year when I and Cantor Doug and Rabbi Julia gaze out from the podium on the bima at the High Holy Days. I will not see him right there, 6th row back, stage right, smiling his big smile at his son, the rabbi. He did that every service, even during the memory-filled sadness of the Yizkor Memorial Service. But like my siblings and grandkids, and his grandkids, we know that he will always be with me this year and every year. As I sit amongst the mourners to think about the overflowing memories of that gregarious, family-focused, Israel-loving, Jewishly committed leader who you know as Ken or Papa, but I will remember simply as my daddy.
And Michelle.
Thank you to each and every one of you for being here today, for wrapping Paul and our whole family in love and support. We are deeply touched by each one of your messages and all of your love. This week we said goodbye to my father-in-law, Kenny. From the beginning, 30 years ago, Kenny and I had an easy relationship. He made an early request of me. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, chutzpahdik as he was, he may have made this request of me on the very day that he met me. As a child, Kenny adored his own grandmother, whom he called Bubby, and Bubby had red hair. So Kenny really, really wanted a red-headed grandchild. And because he was an accountant, he wanted that redhead to be born before the calendar year ended so that we could get the tax write-off. So when I delivered red-headed baby Rachel on December 26th, I was golden. Kenny, called Papa lovingly by his grandchildren, established close relationships with our 3 kids, his California grandchildren, who were 3,000 miles away. When they were just infants, Paul and I would hold the phone up to their ear, as Papa instructed us to do, so that he could coo and talk to the babies as if they understood or even knew who he was. Sure enough, though, they soon grew to recognize Papa's voice on these frequent long-distance calls, and because they were not yet speaking, they would nod, smile, drool, in response to his insistent urging, "Say, Papa." Our family visited Cape Cod every summer, and Linda and Kenny came to California at least once a year, typically for 2 weeks at a time. When we were considering moving to a new house, Paul and I looked at several homes with guest houses, thinking that would give everyone a little privacy during these extended visits. That was until we mentioned it to Kenny, who said he wanted nothing to do with the guest house. He was no guest. His wish was for the kids to come into his bedroom each morning, and he did not want to miss one moment of their day. And the kids returned that affection, and they adored their attentive Papa. On one very special family trip to Abaco in the Bahamas with all the Kipnes kids, spouses, and at that time 9 grandchildren, I caught Kenny silently gazing in at the whole Kipnes clan, simply watching and grinning. The whole family just being together gave him such pure pride and joy. Kenny was a kidder, routinely telling silly stories and teasing us. I once grabbed an opportunity to join him in on his own game. Kenny was an avid gardener, growing his own vegetables at home, and he would plant flowers in our yard when he visited. Sadly, I do not share his green thumb, and when he returned for the third visit in a row, and still there were no blossoms or blooms on the bird of paradise plants he had potted near our pool, I came up with a remedy. I went to Michael's and bought several fake long stem birds of paradise and stuck them in the pots in time for Kenny's arrival. He was so excited to see the blooms. He went on and on about how beautiful they were and how there was hope for me yet as a gardener. The ruse went on for a few days before he finally discovered I had tricked him. Kenny was so surprised that I had it in me to fool him that I think I moved up a notch in how he regarded me from then on. More impressive than being a gardener, I had out-pranked the master prankster. Kenny loved cooking for friends, baking with Linda for our children's bar and bat mitzvah onegs, and making fudge for just about anyone, including everyone here at Oremy. With a twinkle in his eyes, he charmed those around him. He jumped through hoops for his grandchildren and told anyone who would listen just how magnificent and special they were. Every High Holy Day, I watched him beam at Paul throughout the service. I was really touched by how he would get up 2 hours early to go with Paul in the morning to set up for the morning services and to be there to save the perfect seat to watch his son, the rabbi. He was so very proud of Paul and of all of his children. This past Tuesday, hundreds of people filled Cape Cod Synagogue to say goodbye to their friend, their trusted accountant who helped them grow their budding businesses, their neighbor who shared his vegetable bounty, their fellow congregant who was a leader in the Jewish community. On Wednesday, Kenny's wife, Linda, his kids, and his grandchildren spread his ashes into the deep green-blue Atlantic Ocean on a picture-perfect day, carrying out his wishes for his eternity. I will always feel love and deep gratitude for Kenny's reliable humor and ability to make us all smile, his generosity of heart, and his devotion to nourish his family's bellies and their spirits. It is with love and tears that I say back to you, Kenny, what you always said to me as we left one another between visits. He'd give me a hug and say thank you. What a wonderful family. Goodbye, hun. Goodbye, hun. You will be deeply missed.
In the garden there's a tree planted by someone who only imagined me. What love, what vision. I marvel at the gift. No fruit could be sweeter than this. Standing on the shoulders of the ones who came before me. As my people went from land to land, something passed from hand to hand, and it isn't just the words and stories of the ancient laws, golden glories. It's the way we study, the book we study. It's the way we study, the way. I'm standing on the shoulders of the ones who came before me. Today my life is full of choice, because a young man raised his voice, because a young girl took a chance. I am freedom's inheritance. Years ago they crossed the sea, and they made a life that's come to me. I'm standing on the shoulders of the ones who came before me. So in the garden I'll plant a seed, a tree of life for you to read. The fruit will ripen in the sun. The words will sound when I am gone. These are the things I pass along, the fruit, the book, and the song. I'm standing on the shoulders of the ones who came before me. I'm standing on the shoulders of the ones who came before me.
Number 6 on your prayer sheets. When we are dead and people weep for us and grieve, let it be because we touch their lives with beauty and simplicity. Let it not be said that life was good to us, but rather that we were good to life. Our angels spend much of their time sleeping in their dreams. They tear down the new houses by the sea and build old ones in their place. No matter how long they may sleep, 100, 200 years, 10 centuries is not too much. The first to wake up takes the torch that's been handed down, adds a drop of oil to the lamp versus the eternal lamp, and then recalls the name of every other angel, and one by one, as they are remembered, they wake up. For them, as for us, there's nothing more beautiful than memory. To add to those memories, I now invite up Ken's grandson, Daniel.
The day that Papa passed away, my girlfriend and I drove my dad to one of his friends' homes in Studio City. On the way back, we passed a restaurant called Carney's, and Noam asked if I had ever been there. It's a hot dog restaurant set up in an old train car. It also happened to be one of Papa's favorite spots to take us when he visited us in Los Angeles. Later on the drive, I called him and left a voicemail to let him know I was thinking of him. It hurts a ton to think that I just missed talking with him one last time that day. But that moment turned out to be pretty impactful because it got me to start thinking of all the special memories I have with Papa and how most of them seem to be connected to food. Many of you will naturally associate my Papa with the fudge that he brought to temple events when he came out for a visit. Though I also loved the finished product, I can tell you that the process was even more delicious. It wasn't just the ease of bonding with a grandparent over melted, semi-sweet, bittersweet, and milk chocolate bars, mixed with jars of marshmallow fluff. It was also the way he had us clean the mixing bowl afterwards, making sure we scooped and licked clean every last bit of chocolate. And the joy that he found in seeing that most of it ended up on our faces and clothes. Sometimes Papa's sweet tooth was a little unconventional. After years of Papa teasing his grandkids about his love for strange cuisine, like dirt and bugs from the backyard, my dad decided to test how far Papa would go to make his grandchildren laugh. Without Amazon back then for any weird shopping needs, I'm not sure where he got them, but my dad brought with us to a family visit some special treats: chocolate-covered crickets and honey-covered bees. I remember Papa enjoying that meal that day almost as much as he enjoyed seeing the amazed look on all of our faces. He made it look so delicious that I even wanted to try some, although I don't think my parents let me. It wasn't just sweets, though. Papa loved taking us to the Benihana restaurant during his visits to Los Angeles, which he simply called Chop Chop. During summer trips out to the Cape, he would take us on fishing expeditions. And when we got home, he would throw our catch on the grill for dinner. In May this year, Noam and I spent a couple of weeks back east after Lala's stroke, caring for Papa and spending some time with Lala. And we were fortunate enough to be treated to some of his top culinary spots. On nights we would stay home for dinner, we would have sushi and stuffed mushrooms from that top-rated sushi bar, the Stop and Shop Market. Of course, he wanted us to enjoy it along with a glass of the cheapest white wine or scotch that you could find. There was also the Golden Fountain Chinese restaurant across the street from Papa and Lala's apartment. Naturally, the best Chinese food he had ever had. Or more ironically, Papa took his grandchild from Los Angeles to what he called the best Mexican restaurant in town, with the best guacamole in the world, in Cape Cod. Massachusetts. It's going to be hard to move on without someone who made such a huge impact in my childhood and life. It'll be weird going back to the Cape and not seeing him there. The upcoming High Holiday services will seem strange without hearing before, after, and often even during services in his loud whisper how proud he was of my son, the rabbi. And I'll miss our short calls, even though recently they were mostly just about hearing each other's voices. But in between the sad moments, no matter how often they might be in the near future, I know I'll always be able to remember my papa and all of the sweetness that he brought into my life. I'll miss him a lot.
And friend Michael Kaplan.
I remember the first time that I had met Kenny. It was 15, 18 years ago. I was taking a business trip back to the East Coast. I had a program that I was attending in Cape Cod, and Rabbi Paul told me about his father and mother, and he said, you know what? I'm going to give my father a call and tell him that you are coming to Cape Cod. So my first contact, my first meeting of Kenny was at the airport in Hyannis. My plane landed, I got off the plane, went out to the gate. Kenny is standing there, and he welcomed me. Took my bags, put them in the trunk of the car, and toured me around the town. Just took me all over the area, told me all about the area, what it was like. He welcomed me just like a family member. It was, he was like the mayor. You know that mayor personality? He was the mayor. He was the PR agent. He was the chair of the Department of Tourism. He was just giving all of it to me. And then when it came time to eat, he took me to a restaurant, which was a special restaurant, in which his son was a part owner. Your brother Chuck had an interest in a restaurant, and we went there. It was a fish restaurant. And we sat down there, and Kenny knew which dish he loved, and it was his fried fish and chips and all kinds of stuff. It was big, but he ordered one for him and ordered one for me. I had no input into what I was going to eat for lunch that day. That was fine. And somehow he knew that I was an ice cream person, because after lunch he took me to Four Seas. I'm sure you've been there many, many times for a great ice cream. If you're ever on Cape Cod, that's the place to go. Conversation. Now keep in mind, first time I met him, what did he tell me about? And I think anyone sitting in this room can tell me. He talked about his children and their challenges and their joys and everything that was going on in their lives, and his grandchildren. One by one went through the whole list, told me about all of them and his involvement in the things that they were doing. That was his life. That's what it was all about. And when he got through telling me about his children and his grandchildren, then he told me about his children and his grandchildren. And that was it. And that was great. And of course he asked about me and my children and all that, and I filled him in. I get to Massachusetts periodically. I get all over the country. I do seminars, speak at conferences and all that. But periodically I get to Boston, to Cape Cod. Every time I'm in the area, every time I have a conference there, who do you think is sitting front row center? Kenny. Kenny was always there, smile on his face. And he would usually be there, for lunch, after the morning session or before the afternoon session. But at lunch, what do you think he told me about? His children and his grandchildren. That's what life is about. That's what life is about. On my most recent trip to Cape Cod, Kenny and Linda insisted that I stay over at their house. And I arrived there on Friday for Shabbat. We had Shabbat dinner at the house. And then after dinner, we went to shul. Kenny and Linda took me to their shul, and he introduced me to everyone in the congregation, everyone who was there. Everyone, and with a big smile, full of pride, he said, "This is Michael Kaplan, and he's a member of my son Paul's congregation." And then finally, one of the congregants pulled me aside. He said, "I need to talk to you privately." Okay, so the guy pulled me aside. I don't even remember who he was, but I guess he was one of Kenny's friends. Pulled me aside, and he said, "How do you afford that cantor?" We're not supposed to be laughing, are we? But anyway, I guess this is a Minyan service. As we've already heard, Kenny was the creator and the master chef of the glue that holds Congregation Oramy together, his fudge. We all look forward to it every year. Unbelievable. I don't mean to be insensitive at a time like this, but does anyone have the recipe? Okay. And then at the holidays, one thing I enjoyed about the high holidays, when I would get there early to set up for the video and the photography and all of that, Kenny would be there, standing there, with a big smile on his face, just taking it all in, watching all the preparations, getting everything set up. Looking at his son, the rabbi, up on the bima. This was before the service started, and he had a smile on his face that could light up the whole room, that lit up the whole sanctuary, that could light up this whole sanctuary. And I have to tell you, knowing Kenny, knowing what I knew about him, that light still shines. That light still shines and will continue to shine. As Kenny's life was a blessing, his memory will be for a blessing.
You who gather here, crying silent tears, because you cannot talk to me. You can remember I am here, though I am gone, dust to dust. Life goes on. Think of me, I will become a rose in December. If you remember, I'll be a rose. If you remember, December. In your thoughts and in your sight, I am eternal light. Hold the torch against the night, and you will remember. In the flame are many sparks, touching lives beyond the dark. By my deeds I've left my mark. A rose in December. If you remember, I'll be a rose. If you remember, I'll be a rose that blooms in December. So say the words that must be said, prayer for beloved dead. And as our precious tears are shed, we shall remember. Death and loss are what we pay for finding love along the way. A gift forever, sweet bouquet. A rose in December. If you remember, I'll be a rose. If you remember, I'll be a rose. If you remember, I'll be a rose that blooms in December.
I now invite you to rise, standing with Paul, Michelle, and family as we recite Mourner's Kaddish number 8 on our prayer sheets. Yit Gadal v'yit Gadash Shemei Rabbah Be'alma divrach yurutei v'yamlich malchutei B'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael Ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam ulamei omaya. Yibarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudesha b'richu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Damiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba min Shemaya, V'chayim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'mromav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru Amen. You may take your seats. A few announcements. If you would please take your prayer song sheets at the end of our Shiva service and place them. There's a basket towards the exit. If you will place them there for Shiva for tomorrow so we can use them, that would be much appreciated. Thank you to those who were here both yesterday and today, setting up so beautifully for our Shiva service today. We invite you after the service is over to enjoy some sweets just as Ken added sweetness to so many's lives. So we invite you to join us in the Noshri afterwards. But before we end, I want to talk to you about mourning. Mourning takes on different paths for every person. If you're here, it's because you want to support the Kipnes and November family in whatever way they need. And the way that they need you may not be the way that you imagine them needing you. If their response to emails or text messages is slower than normal, be understanding. If they don't accept your offer to bring dinner over, know that they are still grateful. If their reactions to your simchas, your joys, are less exuberant than you would have expected, know that their joy is tempered by a broken heart. If their response to how are you doing is fine, know that they appreciate that you asked, even if they are unable to say more. Tonight, if you see Rabbi Paul and family, please give a quick hand squeeze, a hug, or even a wave, and then move on. We are tempted to chat and to dive into a conversation and to hold them for a while. Our support is amazing and overwhelming. Allowing some space, both physically and emotionally, is a gift that we can give to Rabbi Paul, Michelle, and their family. Let's be kind. Let's be patient. Let's be loving. This is how we were taught to take care of one another by Rabbi Paul. And this is how Paul, son of Ken of blessed memory, along with the entire Kipnes family, needs us to care for them right now. Thank you. We invite you to join us in the Noshri area for desserts and motzi.